Okay, greetings everyone.
Greetings.
Okay, you know they say when you last to speak, it's almost a blessing because everyone said everything already, right? So what I like to do is to kind of direct the discussion, and hopefully we can have some question and answer move in this way as to the relevance of this Duboisian discussion. But before I do that, I'd like to echo what Akinyele said. I spent about 13 years of my life in Atlanta. And so, although I'm not here, Atlanta is still home for me. And when I come to AU is the family in this home. So I look around and I see Dr. Boone and Dr. Brill and Dr. Jones and Dr. Henderson. These are faces that I spent so much time with, and it's really a great thing to be back home. You know, another way of looking at this is it's always nice to come home when there's something exciting taking place at home, right? When you've been gone, there's a new wedding or a new child being born into the family, some kind of exciting event or what have you that we're celebrating. And I kind of see this discussion on the boards in that framework as well. Who would imagine that not one weekend conference or not a week-long discussion or a month-long symposium, but a year-long dialogue on the boards, and still not have enough time to address everything that is said. And then also, in addition to that, spending the time to declare to the world, and we mean this internationally, declare to the world that we will have in 2013 the definitive discussion on the boards. Wow. And I think we should give ourselves a round of applause. Because he's claimed internationally. Everyone claims him. And I'm among those Akinyele who've been listening and waiting for us to say he belongs to us. I'll tell you a quick story, then I'll get to my piece. When I was here, some of you may recall the fire that took the old sociology building. Social work, right. And at that time when I had just gotten here, and I remember talk of Clark Atlanta University and AU in particular being the, quote, house that Dubois built, unquote. And so I just made this connection between the loss of the building and the house that Dubois built. And so I grabbed one of the bricks that was laying on the side right over there, and I still have it. Kind of my claim to a piece of this thing that we call AU, and again, the house that Dubois built. Christy was exactly on point in her reference to the way in which Du Bois addressed this Negro problem, or as Dr. Mills mentioned, these Negro problems, and the extent to which he identified three key components there. I want to start my conversation there, but I also want to kind of focus my comments on addressing three questions I want us to think about. One, why reflect on the Negro problems? Why remember it? Why talk about it? Number two, what models can we identify that in many ways that we can use to guide our work in this contemporary moment? You know, it was almost over a century ago that Du Bois is writing some of what we're reading today. The question I think we grapple with is, what can we do with it now? And then lastly, what are our responsibilities? What are we left with? We can celebrate Du Bois' name, but I think that leaves something before us. And this particular kind of setting, I think it's even increased given the space that we occupy right now. So, with regard to the Negro problems, Du Bois was clear, and Christy illustrated these, so I won't spend too much time here, but to summarize, the question of the Negro problems Du Bois saw as really being a manifestation of three or four basic items. One, the importance of studying the Negro problems as a way of coming to a broader understanding of society and social life. All right, this is important. How many times you've heard, this particularly for those in Africana studies and African American studies, I remember the questions, why are you studying that black stuff? All right? Of course, one response is to say, well, what stuff ought I study? But another important response, and I think Du Bois was way in front of everyone on this, is to study the black stuff is to, in fact, come to a broad understanding of the broader society within which we exist. On a very basic level, race is woven into the fabric of American society. Race has been a definitive force in, as he stated at that first Pan-African conference, in terms of the establishing the color line. And as we look at the various expressions of the black experience, economically, politically, and what have you, they are themselves definitive trajectories in the shaping of America as it exists today. So he was way out in front of us in terms of understanding the importance and the broad implications of understanding this black experience. This intellectual neglect, Christy mentioned. Du Bois saw that an important outcome of the study of these Negro problems is to beat back those very vicious intellectual misrepresentations of the, quote, Negro, unquote. Of course, and getting, perhaps inverting the pyramid, to study the Negro problems is to, in fact, establish a systematic study of the black experience. That helps us understand the very basic path towards its historical development, helping us to understand the helping us to understand the implications of that study, for the work that has to be done, and also helping us to understand the agency, those institutions that we can have at our disposal to address them. But I think most importantly for Du Bois, and I agree with this, that the study of the Negro problem becomes critical in helping us to understand the broader social problems that, as Dr. Mills mentioned, are constantly evolving, shifting. For Du Bois, the study of the Negro problem was critical. It was critical in our attempt to understand the broader shifts and transformations taking place and that were in front of us, and those changes that were taking place on a broader level internationally. And so, when we look at these social problems, I would argue that today, and perhaps the main thrust of my comments today in terms of answering that first question, is that where Du Bois was talking about and reflecting on social problems at a particular point in history, today I think the relevance can be seen in the fact that those social problems, as he addressed, we can see today as social crises. Du Bois understood these social problems in the context of slavery. And not only slavery as a particular moment captured in history, but slavery as a process in this post-slavery period and the conditions and the contradictions that they created. I'll come back to that. He talked about the economic and industrial conditions, and the extent to which those conditions leveled upon the black masses at that particular point in time, some contradictions and very, very profound realities. And I think that can be interpreted today in the context of crises. Political power. I remember reading the list of these studies, the artisan, the Negro church, the Negro family, and I remember the question of black power, political power. And it's funny, the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know, right? And when I went back and did some research, I kind of revisited that question before I came here to Atlanta today, and I realized that the study of the artisan replaced the question of political power, and I wasn't aware of that. But nonetheless, and we've already said how much of his work has been dedicated to the question of the problem of power. All right? And then certainly the question of culture. All right? I want to spend just a moment reading a passage that he left us with. He was explaining, as Dr. Mills mentioned, some of the very, very profound negative and debilitating realities that were confronting the African American population at the time. Talked about the illiteracy, talked about the educational crises, the crises in terms of our political powerlessness. But this is what he said. He said, notwithstanding those, the great deficiency of the Negro, however, is his small knowledge in the art of organized social life, that last expression of human culture. His development in group life was abruptly broken off by the slave ship, directed into abnormal channels and dwarfed by the black codes, and suddenly wrenched anew by the Emancipation Proclamation. He finds himself, therefore, peculiarly weak in that nice as Dr. Mills mentioned, adaptation to individual life, to the life of the group, which is the essence of civilization. And so he argued here that in addition to these economic realities, in addition to these political realities, in addition to the lingering effects of slavery, that culture question was key. Because it was that culture question that provided the foundation for the way we interact with one another, the way we understand power, the way we define our relationships with women, Dr. Shefton, the way we understand our relationships, the relationship between men and women, the way we understand our relationship with the cosmos. Right? There was that powerful thing that we call culture. So it's not just a song and a dance or the cuisine and the garbs. Right? It is that collective DNA of a people. And Du Bois is saying that this thing is critical. Right? And so for me, as I conclude, the most fundamental question that I think we have to grapple with is this question of the utility of this study. How can we use it today? How can we make it relevant? How can we make it useful? And I think it becomes useful to us when we begin to understand the juxtaposition between what we study and how we study Du Bois and the profound crises that confront us right now. Right. If I could just take one minute, economically speaking right now, we were talking, Dr. Jones and I were talking about this book recently published by Michelle Alexander, talking about slavery, right? The book that she wrote is called The New Jim Crow, right? And the profound impact that it's having on our communities, and particularly the young men that are being incarcerated, all right? We're talking about these economic conditions right now. 2008 sent shockwaves through the country. We need to pause and ask ourselves the question, so what does this mean about the economic stabilities within black communities and black families? All right? We have an election coming up right now, and right now it appears that we are rendering the black vote effectively irrelevant. No one's speaking to the black vote in any meaningful way, and not even black folk. And then perhaps the most important charge before us is the fact that we have to remember. And so my last point, and I know I'm chewing up these last points, the last point I want to offer is a quick quote that I came across by Mulan Kundera about this importance of remembrance. Yeah. All right, some of you may be very familiar with this. So the first step in liquidating a people is to erase its memory, destroy its books, its culture, its history. Then have someone write new books, manufacture new culture, invent a new history. Before long, the nation will begin to forget what it is and what it was. The world around it will forget even faster. The struggle of man against power is a struggle of memory against forgetting. So our work in remembering Du Bois has profound implications that does not rest in 1898 and have profound meaning for our work that stands before us in 2013 and 2014 and on into the future. Thank you very much.